Hello and welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I'm so excited you're joining me today. Today I have a very special guest all the way from Tennessee. Her name is Abby Ream Snyder. She works at the Wears Valley Ranch in East Tennessee, which adjoins the Great Smoky Mountains. Welcome, Abby.
Thanks so much. Oh, it's just great to be on.
Well, I am so excited to talk with her. She has so many things that are going to be encouraging. She is a single woman who does not have her own family yet, but she serves the children at the ranch that she works at. Tell us a little bit about the ranch where you work.
Yeah, so it's in a little town called Wears Valley, Tennessee, and like Beth said, it's right up against the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So it's just beautiful here. And it was started in the late or early 90s by a couple named Jim and Susan Wood, who they wanted to care for kids in crisis situations. So specifically kids who they're not a danger to themselves or to others. So they just saw it as like, there's so many kids who are falling through the cracks, sort of. And so they specifically wanted to start a place that was like very much a home, not like an institution. And so here at the ranch, we have 4 homes. We have 2 for girls and 2 for boys. And when I first came to the ranch, I worked in one of the boys' homes for 2 years. So that was a wild time because
I can imagine.
Yes. Yeah. In each of the homes, there's a set of house parents. So they live with the kids and they're just stand-in parents for the kids. And then the house parents are also like assisted by at least ideally 2 mentors in each home. So I was a mentor. Their mentors are usually like recent college grads, early to mid 20s. So pretty soon after college, I came here. Yeah, I started working with the boys and it was wild. It was a wild time. We had anywhere from 4 to 8 boys at any time. And then our house parents had 3 little kids too. It was really hard a lot of times too. I'm not naturally gifted at working with boys. So I really had to learn a lot. I don't have any brothers. I just have one sister. So yeah, I had to learn a lot and I'm still learning. I feel like I've gotten better at like interacting with teenage guys since then and just how they think. I don't know. I tell people like I knew how to cook before I worked at the ranch, sort of, but I really learned how to cook when I had to cook for all those boys. So
I can imagine.
it was wild, really wild time just learning like how to double and triple recipes sometimes and that it doesn't really matter how it looks. They just want it to taste good.
Well, that is so true. I was thinking as you were saying that those boys, when you set a hot meal in front of them, you're their favorite person. And it is true, that old
Yeah.
saying, a way to a man's heart through his stomach. Oh, the way
Yeah.
to a teenage
Yeah.
boy's heart is through his stomach.
And I was thankful too that like most of them weren't picky. So I could try to like experiment a little bit here and there with just like some fun things. Like one of the boys wanted like schnitzel, like, except I had to make it with, usually it's made with pork. And so I would make it with chicken because that's what we had it on hand. And he was like,
Uh-huh.
this is my thing. I love this. So
Oh,
it
that's
was
so
fun.
fun.
Yeah. Just kind of learning different things.
Yes. And having that
Yeah.
freedom to experiment because they're going to eat it. They're
Yeah.
not that picky. So they're going to just
Yeah.
feel very
Yeah.
cared for and loved and ready to eat whatever you put in front of them.
Yeah.
It's interesting, her story of working at this ranch, because it reminds me of, for a short time, my parents were house parents at a very similar ranch in Texarkana. It's called Water Springs Ranch, and it is so identical to what you're talking about. I think the ranch that we had in
Hmm.
Texarkana was smaller than the Wears
Hmm.
Valley Ranch, but there were homes. And when we were there, they were in the process of building more homes
Okay.
so that they could
Yeah.
accommodate more kids. But the same
Hmm.
setup where house parents would come in with their families. And so
Hmm.
I also was in a family of all girls. My poor dad. He's going to have extra jewels in his crown in heaven because he had 4 girls and then went to Water Springs Ranch and helped. He and my mom did a girls' home. They were house parents for a girls' home.
It's so
And
good.
so I mean, how many girls were in the house? Like 8 girls. And
Wow.
my
Wow.
mom, of course, and the girls, we were in charge of what you're talking about,
Hmm.
cooking for a crowd.
Hmm.
And that I remember going through my mom's cookbooks, and she had one that was like called the Casserole Cookbook. And it is what you think of from the 80s. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably actually the
Mm-hmm.
90s. And so I made probably the worst casseroles. Like if I served them today, no one would eat them. But
Oh man.
I also had that same experience of having the freedom to learn how to
Yeah.
cook and make new things. And I remember it stands out because at Thanksgiving, I always make the sweet potato casserole
Mm-hmm.
or sweet potato. It's not really a pie, but casserole doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
Regardless, I remember starting that somewhere around the time we lived at the ranch, and I would look at the sweet potato, or maybe it was yams and syrup on the can. It had a recipe for
Uh-huh.
sweet potato casserole, and I followed it to the T. And it was so bad. It was so bad
Oh
because
no.
it's swimming in syrup. You add all this syrup, then
Yeah.
you add more sugar topping to the top. Anyway, over the years, I have really grown in my skills, and now I do, I
I'm
start
sure.
from scratch with the fresh sweet potatoes, and I cut back the sugar. It's evolved. I've created a recipe of my own. But it's so funny because your experience and what you're doing right now is so similar to
I
that
love
time
that.
period when I was a teenager. And just overall, it's such a great ministry to those kids because I know for the goal of our ranch, and I'm not sure, I'm guessing the same with yours,
Mm-hmm.
was to hopefully reunite the children with their families
Hmm.
if it was possible.
Mm-hmm. So for ours, it really depends on the situation. So they a lot of times our kids just come from situations that are so messy that it really isn't ideal for them to go back with their parents. But sometimes it works out. We have some kids who have been adopted and they have really great families, but they're just struggling with to attach and yeah, connect with their families well. So the ranch is a good place for them to come. And in a circumstance like that, it is ideal for them to be able to go back with their families. But a lot of our kids just come from backgrounds with addiction
And it's just
and
not
maybe
possible.
yeah, yeah, or a parent's in jail or they're living with their grandparents and their grandparents are just too old but love them. A lot of our kids have someone in their lives who are like, we know that this isn't a good situation for you. We need to find somewhere else. So they bring them to the ranch. And yeah, so again, it's pretty specific group of kids that we're ministering to, but it's super necessary. And they can graduate from our programs. The younger ones are homeschooled here and just kind of like homeschool tutor style or tutoring style. And then the older ones. So once they're in middle school, they sometimes will have some classes out of the home, but the high schoolers all go to our school building on campus. So they have more it's still very individualized and smaller settings. So they might have 3 to 6
Mhm.
kids in their class. But yeah, they're more so sitting at a desk with a teacher, just really small. But yeah, the younger ones are in the home, which is really nice. And they have the freedom to take more time if they need to, or speed through
Mhm.
school if they need to as well. So it's a
Yeah,
sweet
just work at their
individualized
pace.
system. Yeah, yeah, it is.
That's
Just
wonderful.
yeah, everything about it was created very intentionally just to help the kids thrive spiritually, emotionally, to learn about the Lord. We have chapel 5 times a week. It's a really sweet, really unique place. And I'm just like, well, how do I get to be a part of this? This is great.
And do you
Yeah.
currently live there? I know you mentioned there are house
Mhm.
parents, but do you live there? Does most of the staff live on site? And how big is it?
Yeah. Yeah. So most of our staff, I would say probably 60 to 70% of our staff live on campus. So it's a good chunk. I think we have about 50 on staff. And then currently we can house 32 kids. We have maybe 26 or 27. That might be a little bit off, but we want to be full. So that's the big thing that we're working on right now. And then there's a lot of staff students too. So just the families that live on campus or live nearby, their kids will oftentimes when they're younger, they're homeschooled at home. And then once they're a little bit older, they're incorporated into class with our residential students. So there are just always an abundance of kids around. It's not just our residential students. So there's always someone to play with. There's always people around. It gets pretty crazy at lunches. We have lunches all together every weekday. And Corey, our cook, is she's phenomenal. She cooks really good meals and cooks for a lot of people. And it just gets really loud in the dining hall with like
Can
probably
imagine.
100, 120 people. It gets a little bit, yeah, wild.
Every now and then you
But
might have to just go eat outside.
yeah, yeah, it's true. Especially when the weather's so beautiful. So that's kind of a little snapshot of the ranch.
Well, it's such a great thing for those
Yeah.
children to be able to be there and have all of those people just ministering in their lives, encouraging them, teaching them about
Mhm.
Christ. And then the other thing, like you mentioned, is assessing whether or not it's a good situation. You don't want to put them back in a
Mhm.
bad situation. And so I'm sure it's very similar to Water Springs Ranch, where we were for a short time, because I do remember the same thing. If they weren't able to go back home, there is the option of adoption, or they just stay and live there for years and
Mhm.
have consistent parents in their lives. So that's such a wonderful ministry.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
at this ranch, there's a big front lawn. And one weekend, you invited over some of the single staff and staff families, and you had a fall brunch on the lawn. Tell me a little bit about that. Was that your
Yeah.
first time to host such an event?
We've done some brunches before, but it was definitely on like a smaller scale. I live in a house on campus with there's four other girls in my house, and then there's like an identical house right across the lawn from us. So it's just like these two houses that are completely full of women, and it's pretty fun. I really enjoyed it. But we have a big front lawn that's kind of torn up and muddy sometimes. But we just realized like this is such an asset. I've only lived in this house for maybe 3 months now. I've just jumped around from different parts of like different housing on the ranch. So finally, once I moved over here, just had some more space, and all the girls in my home are pretty chill about having people over, which is really sweet. So we did a big fall brunch on the lawn, and oftentimes it's like mentors and other, yeah, single staff who come, but this time not as many people were available on Saturday morning. So we were like, well, let's invite some staff families too. So we ended up with like one of the families that has 9 kids. They came over, and some other people came in, and it was really sweet because I don't often have them over for like meals and things. It's more often like maybe one person at a time, or maybe like all the mentor or a lot of the mentors over on like a Friday night or something like that. That happens. Like we'll do like game nights and things like that. But it was really fun to have all the staff families over, and we were like, oh, we should do this more often. And it was just a good, I don't know, it's nice to have your own space that you feel like you can really utilize. And
It was probably a
mhm,
really fun time for the kids to be able to be a part of the big event as well.
it was.
Another event that I know you started back in 2020 was a Christmas market. And so that was your first year, I guess, of doing it, was this December
Yeah.
2020. And
Uh-huh.
so tell me a little bit more about your Christmas market that you're starting
Mhm.
or that you've
Yeah.
started.
So, well, I remember in the fall of 2020, I was on a hike with a few friends, and I don't even know. I think it must have been an idea from the Lord. It just kind of like hit me. And I've visited Germany a few times, and they are very well known for their Christmas markets. And I was with a friend who's from Germany, and we were just talking about different things. And I was like, what if we do a Christmas market at the ranch? And we just started brainstorming like, this sounds super fun. We wouldn't be able to like sell things. It wouldn't be like your traditional market, but what could be the thing that is like the centerpiece of it all? Like, what are we doing at this Christmas market? We'll need to have food, obviously, but the kids do something called mini courses in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we have 3 weeks of just fun classes where the kids are still doing school in the morning, but in the afternoons, the staff on campus can just teach them anything. We've done like furniture refurbishing. I've done embroidery before, sourdough pretzel making, just things like that, where it's like learning all these different skills. Sometimes it's just something fun like going for a hike or singing Christmas carols. But we realized all these things that the kids are making for their mini courses, we could just have those be like the booths and have it kind of be a little showcase for what they have learned and made. So that year we this was the only year that this happened, but we did it in the barn because we are a ranch. We have horses and animals. So we have a nice barn, and it got so out of hand with setup though, because we like the barn staff were like clearing out the hay and everything in the barn like days ahead of time for us. And then I think it was probably like a week between like setup and full tear down. And we were like, we can't do this again. But it was so magical just how it all came together. This was when I was a mentor. So I was working very full time. As a mentor, you work from the time you wake up, basically until the time you go to bed, really until like about 9:45 or 10 o'clock at night. And then
Oh, wow.
depending on if you're a night owl, you can stay up a little bit after that. So we were working and doing all of that. And then in the evenings, I remember going down to the barn a few evenings and working on stuff. But that year, my friend Ashley, she was the one who more so organized and planned a lot of it. The year after that, I sort of took over and we did it at like, we have like this nice picnic pavilion. And so that's where we did it the past 2 years. And those years just kind of tried to up the food, making that. I think the first year we just had pizza. And it was still COVID time. So we were all wearing masks and we had to like sit in individual stalls to eat our food. It was very biblical. It was like, this hits home with like the nativity and everything. It's very funny. But it was still a good time. And then the past 2 years, we've done it at the pavilion. And last year, I just remember making the mistake of making like these individual like apple pies for people, and just being in the kitchen so late with two of my friends one night, and I was kind of getting sick. And I remember being like, I shouldn't be making these right now. Like, I don't feel good. And I'm making all these apple pies for people. And why are we doing this? And then it was kind of just a lesson for me of like, okay, you're going to learn
A
from this.
learning moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And just being like, okay, people are going to enjoy these. And that is just the most important thing that I can think of for it. So, but I was very thankful. Nobody got sick from me. And I made it through making all those apple pies, but it was funny.
I'm sure they very much enjoyed them and appreciated your hard work. But you're right, making small individual pies the night before a big event for tons of people, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it was definitely a learning moment. I told myself this year, you're not allowed to do that, Abby.
Right. You have to pick something easier for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I really like that you've said is that a big thing you've come to believe is that as believers, it's our Christian duty to have fun and to celebrate. And it's something you keep in mind when creating, planning, and running any event, from one as big as the Christmas market to having people over for dinner. And I can tell that just from talking to you, just how much joy you have in doing it. And also how much you try to celebrate even the small things, which I don't know if your Christmas market would be considered small. But it sounds like you have a gift for being able to put a lot of joy and happiness into the events you're creating.
I hope so. That's definitely like my goal. I definitely get sometimes bogged down in details and it's so easy to work yourself into like a tune, it's just, I remember several different times just being like, I don't even know what's wrong with me. Like, I can't think of anything positive to say. But those, as I was like preparing for an event, and those were all of those I just had to take as learning experiences of like, okay, I need to stay on top of this. And if I do like speak to someone shortly or harshly, it's like, no, you need to go apologize. And that can be so humbling too. Or just like always trying to pray beforehand. And sometimes I'm not even the best at that, but really just asking that the Lord would help me to keep a clear mind about it, a level head, and just being able to laugh at things when they happen. Like, that's a good test for me. If it's like, if something ridiculous happens, like just something kind of bad or something doesn't go as planned, if I can laugh at it, that's a good test of like my heart. If I get all like uptight and grumpy about it, that's clearly like I am in sin. So
Good
maybe
lesson for all of us.
yeah, yeah, it really is. So I feel like I have so much to learn about like hospitality and events still, but I really has been such a spiritual lesson already. I feel like I've learned so much from it, which is really sweet. It's so interesting how like the Lord gifts us those spiritual lessons through these opportunities of serving other people and doing something fun. Yeah. At the beginning, I think it's just been some like a little spiritual principle that I've been kind of working out in my mind since maybe the summer. I think as believers, we should be just having more fun than the world and like showing that to other people of like, this is what it looks like to live with the Lord. And there's so much that the Lord has given to us and so much we have to rejoice in and wanting to share that with other people. And I feel like it's something that I want to like communicate better with people and like with the kids here at the ranch as I'm preparing and kind of running different events. But I've talked about it with my friends before and we're just like, yes, this is so good. So those are just some of my
Yes, you
thoughts.
want yes, absolutely. You want to be able to show that there is joy in the Christian
Yeah.
life. I mean,
Yeah.
Christians should celebrate and have the best events, have the best
Mhm.
parties and celebrations, and our celebrations should be so full of joy that the world
Yeah.
looks at it and says, "What are they celebrating?
Yeah.
Wow, what is
Yeah.
this? I want to be a
Amen.
part of it." And so
Mhm.
you're right. Our celebrations should not be austere and, just very
Yeah.
simple and we can eat just crusts of bread and that's all. And we don't put any forethought into the beauty of it or the
Right.
presentation or the special foods or how to make it special, maybe something unique or whatever. So
Mhm.
very good thoughts on that subject, and I completely agree with you. It sounds like you are learning so many amazing things, and I feel like I do agree with you that you have more to learn, but we all do. No matter how old you are, God teaches us with lessons in our daily life. We
Mhm.
are
Yeah.
constantly being sanctified, and so even somebody who's done it for years is still learning
Mhm.
patience when things go wrong or
Yeah.
there's a surprise guest that walks in, or you have a big meal and then the family that you invited is sick and they're no longer coming, but yet you have all this
Mhm.
food. Whatever the
Mhm.
situation is, we're constantly learning how to become better people
Yeah.
through it all.
Yeah. It's so true.
Let's take a quick break. Are you searching for hands-on activities to help your kids explore the practical side of science? Look no further than your kitchen. Inquisicook blends food science and culinary arts into an engaging program that puts delicious food on the family table. Let Inquisicook do the teaching with lesson videos, reliable recipes, and assessment tools that put students on track for success. Their online platform is easy to navigate and optimized for mobile, so the learning experience can move from the classroom to the kitchen without a hitch. Inquisicook turns curious students into intuitive cooks, not just recipe followers. Say goodbye to the tyranny of the ingredients list and say hello to utilizing what's in season, what's on sale, or what's in the fridge. Visit inquisicook.com to view sample lessons, then check out the recipe gallery to see just how crave-worthy science can be. Food. Let's talk about food. I don't know
Mhm.
if you want to talk about a particular menu that you serve when you have people over for dinner, if you want to talk more about your Christmas market and the food you do there, but tell
Mhm.
us
Yeah.
something that you love to create.
It's funny. I was trying to think of like a specific recipe that I would use a lot for if I have somebody coming over just for dinner. And I commit that cardinal sin of just making recipes that I've never made before for people all the time. So I was thinking about it even more as I was driving home today. Something that I haven't even made this in a while, but I have made it for people before. And I used to make it for the boys a lot when I worked in one of the homes here at the ranch was Greek bowls. I would do like shredded chicken with, I made like a herb and spice blend and just like shred it in the mixer, which was so helpful. And that's a good like little tip. And then I don't know if I ever made it for the boys, but I've made it for myself before, like homemade falafel, which is so good. So you could put that in there too. And then just any sort of toppings that are kind of in that Greek, fake Greek, type of realm. Tomatoes, cucumbers, onion, like a tzatziki or yogurt sauce, and then hummus, or you could do chickpeas. So things like that. I love, yeah, meals where there's just a bunch of toppings and you can kind of pick from whatever you want. So that's something that I was like, oh, that's such a good go-to for like having people over. It's definitely harder on like a bigger scale, but it worked really well for just the boys in the home where I was working at the ranch.
Well, that is just a blessing for those boys for sure. And I agree with you that having bowls is actually pretty easy. It enables people to be able to build what they like. You can avoid
Mhm.
food allergies and of course taste. Boys might put all meat. I
Yes,
know I've had to
yes.
send my boys
Uh-huh.
back at times when they were
Yeah.
teenagers. It's like, okay, you have rice and chicken.
Yeah.
You have to
Go
go
get some
add some
vegetables.
vegetables.
Yep.
Go back through the line.
You need
But
something
anyway,
green.
yeah, sometimes moms have to tell them to add some things, but it
Yeah.
does help when you're having company over to be able to
Hmm.
just, let moms help their kids, the younger ones, build a bowl that they will eat, or older
Hmm.
kids can kind of pick the things they like or avoid allergies, that sort of thing. So
Right.
I
Right.
love the Greek bowl idea for having company or hosting
Hmm.
or you providing food for someone else. So, do you have any shortcuts or time savers with this? Is there anything that you do
Hmm.
to prep ahead of time, or do you do it all just right before you serve?
Well, I work full time, so it's just easiest to prep things the night before for sure. Doing a lot of chopping, especially, and I can't come home at like 5 or 5:15 and just get everything out on the table if I'm even if you're just having one person over. So it's really helpful to just do some of that prep the night before, and even with some things, even cooking it the night before too. That and then you can just heat it up. That's been so helpful for me just knowing that I like have that done, I can just clean whatever I need to real quickly and put some flowers on the table if I have some things like that. Yeah.
Yes. When you were cooking for all those boys, about how many were you
Mhm.
cooking for?
Yeah, we had anywhere from 4 to 8 the whole time I was there, and most of them were teenagers, so they did just eat a lot. The time when we had the most, when we had 8, I think the youngest was like 11, the oldest was 18, so we were going through a lot of food.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So was it your responsibility to cook every night? Were you the cook or did you just step in at times?
I didn't have to cook every night. So the way that it works for the ranch is that the house parents have each set has either Monday and Tuesday off or Wednesday and Thursday off. And then the mentors will kind of be the primary authority in the homes while the house parents are off. So I usually end up cooking just a few times a week, like a breakfast and a dinner, but all that kind of adds up after a while of like, okay, now I know how to do this. I know prepping breakfast the night before because cooking for 10, 11 people in the morning is just not super feasible.
You are going to be
So
so ready when you become a mom and have
I
your own
hope
family. You're going to be
so.
like, this is easy. I have one
Yeah.
child. This is the easiest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. I
You
even
won't know what to
now I
do.
find that just like cooking for myself, I'm like, this is kind of boring. Like I'd rather cook for more people. Like I don't cook as much. I cook things that I like for myself, but I don't always cook the most interesting things for myself. It's just I think it's more fun when you have like at least like 4 or 5 people that you're cooking for.
Well, you have people who are enjoying it with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it does make a difference when you're cooking for a crowd because you're
Hmm.
sharing a meal together and everybody's talking and visiting and talking about the
Right.
food. And when you cook just for yourself, it's a little bit easier to just be like, well, apples and cheese will work for dinner tonight.
Yep. Yep.
Throw in a slice of bread.
Yep.
That's a well-rounded
Yep.
meal. I think
It's
honestly, for the
true.
last 3 days at school, I have brought hummus and crackers and like an apple or an
Yeah.
orange. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's lunch, but I don't know if I was by myself, I could imagine. I told my husband the other day, it's a good thing I don't live by myself because I'd probably waste away to nothing because I'm kind of that type of personality too. I like cooking for people. And for
Uh-huh.
myself, I make an excuse like,
Yeah.
well, I'll just eat some crackers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's so true.
Not a good thing. So
I
yeah, no,
know.
I need people. I need people to cook for.
Yeah.
What kind of foods do you serve at the Christmas market? You said that the kids do things, they learn all kinds of new skills and ways to make things. And so they present that at the Christmas market. Tell me some of the foods that you have.
The past 2 years we've done bratwurst, and we'll probably do that again this year because it's so easy as like a go-to because it's, I mean, easily gluten-free without a bun, and everyone loves them, including all the kids, which is so helpful. But last year we did roasted potatoes, our little like miniature apple pies that I will not do again this year because it took so long. And then, oh, what else do we do? One of my friends taught the kids how to make like sourdough soft pretzels. So they baked up a bunch of those as well. And then we just had a lot of Christmas cookies too. We had different people. So I was not making, like, I think I helped with some of the prep for a lot of the food, but I was not in the kitchen cooking it. There were so many people helping me with that, which was really a gift. But
Yes,
so
that
this
is
year
a
we'll probably
gift.
do, yeah, we'll do bratwurst again and maybe potatoes, but I plan on like farming out a lot of food and being like, hey, can you cook or bake like 75 soft pretzels, just things like that. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, it's very fun that the kids are a part of that and really get to participate and present what they've learned
Yes.
and also share the food that they've created along with the different
Hmm.
staff or moms or whoever moms and dads that are creating and also presenting food and sharing it. That's just such a great time.
Yeah. That's one thing that I thought of as kind of another tip of like I don't have kids. Like I'm unmarried and don't have children, but there's since I work at a children's home, there's just always kids around, including a lot of the staff families' kids. So having kind of like an army of children for different, especially like bigger events is really helpful because you could just be like, hey, I need you to go get this. And they just like dart off across campus to go like run home and get like some tablecloth clamps or something like that. And they have a lot more energy than I do. So it's
Yes. And
really,
they're
really
so
fun.
excited to help and be a part of
Yes.
it. And like you said, so energetic. They can get so
Hmm.
much done.
It's so true. Yeah.
Kids can be such a great help. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of kids, I know we're talking a little bit about older ones, but I have a hot tip for Christmas. If you have a toddler in your life, whether it's someone you know or if there's one in your own kitchen, a kitchen step stool. I'm not sure if there's probably different names. I think I've also seen it called a standing tower. I had a kitchen step stool when my kids were young, but this is not what I had. I just had a regular old step stool that they were going to fall off of if I wasn't guarding them at every moment. This is a stool that they can climb in and then they stand up and they're surrounded kind of like a barrier around them. They're enclosed where they have to be able to stand on their own. But if they get off balance, they just go to the side. If they're not going to fall out, it's kind of like a little guard around them. But there's an
Hmm.
opening at the bottom so that if they sit down, they can crawl back out. It's so perfect because the height raises them to counter level so they can see what mom's doing. They can help in the kitchen, or they can just stand there. If somebody's in the kitchen cooking, they can be eating their snack or reading a book, but they're counter level and mom can be in the kitchen doing things and not have to have a hand constantly on the child trying to help. In fact, my daughter-in-law has the best video recently of my oldest granddaughter, who's a toddler. She was helping mom bake chocolate chip cookies. And she was in that little standing tower and she was doing all the tasks. She was looking into the mixer and she was adding some chocolate chips and she was getting a spoon and tasting the dough. And she was
It's so good.
100% a part of it. And she had her little chef's hat on. It was just so sweet that my daughter-in-law was able to move back and forth and use both hands, bringing
Hmm.
flour or measuring
Hmm.
off the flour. And scooping chocolate chips. She wasn't having to hold on to, like back in the day, if
Right.
my kids were up on a stool or a chair, I was holding on to them and then trying to do everything with one
Hmm.
hand. So hot kitchen tip. I'm going to have to put this on my website.
Yes.
I do have a page, a shop page where you can see the things we're talking about. I'll have to ask her which one she bought because it's on Amazon. I'm sure you can find them other places, but every toddler, every house with a toddler needs this in their life.
Hmm.
Perfect Christmas gift.
Yes.
What is your best prep tip? You talked
Hmm.
before about loving to try new things. And that's such a great idea to be able to, while you're young, figure out the things that you really do like and the things you're good at
Hmm.
and kind of keep menus in mind, recipes in mind that you want to cook for others, and even just a file that you start collecting for your future family. So tell me kind of how you do that for the ranch that you live on.
Well, just usually when I cook either for myself or for other people, I often just Google or Pinterest things, just things that sound good. A little bit of improvising happens sometimes, or I'll often be like looking at two recipes of the same thing and being like, okay, that looks like it'll work, but not that. So I'm gonna mix in this thing from another recipe. I've definitely done that before. But then just another, I feel like my main prep tip that's come to mind that's like probably my tried and true thing for any like especially bigger events or having like multiple people over for to your home is just having like a wing woman, someone who you can like rely on, who you just know like if I ask them to do something they're going to do it well. It might not be exactly like what I would do, but the quality is going to be good and I can just know that it's going to get done. So I just have several friends who I know that I can rely on to like know where things are. And I've like done the same for them where we're like doing things together. Like it's just tag teaming, honestly. So that's a huge blessing for me.
That's actually a fabulous idea. It's so much more fun when you have somebody with you because you're not just working together, but you're side by side talking and laughing and
Yes.
catching up on
Yeah.
each other's lives. And so the work's
Yeah.
getting done, but it's a lot more fun than if you're just by yourself getting it done.
It's true. Yeah. It's so true.
So, what is your best advice for showing warm hospitality for those coming to your home or to your events? How do you do a presentation that makes them feel like you want them
Mhm.
to be there?
Yeah. So the one that I thought of was just being willing to say yes. I feel like it's so much easier to say no, and I've even learned this with just like working in the home with the boys. Now I just work in. I'm the receptionist at the ranch, but I see the kids pretty much every day, or at least every weekday, and so I still interact with them a lot. And it's just so easy to be like, nope, we can't do that. Nope, nope, nope. And just having that like open willingness to say yes of like, oh yeah, no, we can do that. So just thinking about different events, and sometimes people will have ideas, brainstorming ideas. Or when we had our brunch a few weeks ago, one of the boys, he's one of the staff kids at the ranch, apparently on their like drive over here, he was asking like, "Ooh, will there be hot chocolate?" And we didn't have hot chocolate on our like menu spread, which we didn't actually even have a menu because everybody was bringing their own thing. But we didn't have hot chocolate out. But I knew that we had some in the house. And so I was like, "Well, Bryce, we do have hot chocolate. Let's get some for you." And we can make that. And I hope that it just made it more of a fun time for him and some of the other kids too. But I started thinking after that of sometimes it's not feasible to say yes, but if we're not here, like if we're not breaking a rule or if it's not going to put anyone in danger, like just having that willingness is a big thing.
What is your must have kitchen item and where can we find it?
Mine is definitely my cast iron skillet, which is more, mine's like deeper. So you could make soup in it, probably not for like a whole big family, but for a few people. And I just keep it out on my stovetop all the time. And I cook in it pretty much every day because I always make breakfast in it. But I just love it. It kind of makes me feel like a pioneer woman, even though I'm nothing like that. I live near Sevierville, Tennessee. So that's where like the Lodge factory store is. So you can get them there. But mine's a Lodge, but I got mine at Rural King, which is just like a farm store. I think I just saw it one Saturday when I was going there for other things and was like, I need a cast iron skillet, definitely. And I definitely need that deep one. So that's been fun. And then I also love my Dutch oven a lot too. Just those things that are very like hardy and sturdy and you can use for a lot of different things, kind of like no fuss.
Oh, those are basic kitchen tools. Most people have a Dutch oven. I know I have a stainless steel one that I can throw in the dishwasher because it just makes it
Mm-hmm.
so easy. There are the enamel coated cast iron, and I think those have to be hand washed. Pretty sure you can't put that in a dishwasher.
Probably, yeah.
But the stainless steel I love because I can, but everyone does need a cast iron skillet. So if
Mm-hmm.
you haven't decided to purchase one, you really should try it out because
Yes.
they can
Yes.
heat up really, really well. They can be used for all kinds of things. Someone mentioned recently cooking a pizza in the bottom of one. I haven't
That's
actually tried
brilliant.
that yet.
Yeah.
You can preheat the cast iron in the oven. I do that for cornbread. I've already talked
Okay.
about that method on here, so I won't
Yeah.
re-say everything I've already said before. But there's so many cool things you can do with the cast iron skillet. And
Mm-hmm.
if you
Mm-hmm.
maintain them well, they really can be nonstick where you can cook things like pancakes and I don't know, some people may have theirs nonstick enough to do eggs. I'm not usually that brave.
Mine either.
I usually
No.
have a
Yeah.
special nonstick skillet that's so super easy for eggs, but I know there are some people who do it and I'm sure it washes out the little bit of scrubbing. I do use mine all the time for all kinds of things from cooking,
Mm-hmm.
browning meat and creating some kind of like, I don't know what. I'm trying to think of what we created recently with some kind of meat and vegetable dish and rice on the side or something. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if it's on your stove all the time or really close to the stove, easily accessible, you will find yourself using it so much and wonder how in the
Yes.
world did I not have
Yes.
a cast iron skillet?
Yes. We always use cast iron in the house when I was working with the boys. And then I have a friend who always used cast iron and I lived with her and then I just got used to it. And I was like, how could I not have one? So
So it had to go on your wish list.
yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a story for us that you'd like to share?
I do. So I think I mentioned I work as the receptionist here at the ranch. So I just end up giving it's a lot of admin work, but then I end up giving tours and just kind of like welcoming anyone who sometimes we'll just have people stop by and be like, what is this place? What's going on here? And I'll just tell them a little bit about the ranch, what we do. And then sometimes people want to schedule a tour or they already know about the ranch and they just come and want to ask questions about it. So we're pretty used to having like guests come and even our director is like, we want to have an atmosphere of hospitality, even though we're ministering to these kids from the crisis situations, but we don't want to have like this wall up of like no one can come here. So it's kind of a balance of making sure the kids are safe, but then also welcoming people as well. It's probably about a month and a half ago. We had a lady, well, she called even before that, and I didn't talk to her on the phone, but somebody else did. And she was just kind of like, I'm going to be in the area. I want to come and visit the ranch and have a tour. Like, I think she had been here before, but her husband hadn't. So she wanted to have a tour of the ranch and see it. She was older. They're like in their 80s and they're coming up, or they're from Florida. So they hadn't been up here for a while. So I like called her back a while later, I think is what happened. I called her back and scheduled a day for them to come for what I thought was just a tour. And she did not think it was just a tour. It was going to be, well, I think it was just because she was older and she did not communicate clearly about it. But it ended up that the day before she was supposed to come for her tour, she called and talked to another lady who works here at the ranch and was like, we run into some traffic. We're going to be coming in a little bit later, like 5:30 or 6. Is that going to be okay? And we were just like, what? That's like after the offices are closed. What's going on? And we kind of pieced together. She thinks that she's going to stay here on campus. And we have some tiny cabins for like for some guests, especially if staff have family that want to come and visit, things like that. And we have camp cabins because we run summer camp. during the summer, but nothing was like available for her except for like a camp cabin. And so we decided like, okay, she thinks she's going to come stay here. We clearly she doesn't have any other place that's like booked to stay. So just through like a series of phone calls, we kind of deduce this information from her without being like, oh, we didn't know that you expected to stay on campus. So I went and got a camp cabin ready for her. And we just had to all be like, okay, we're going to smile and laugh at this. And this is kind of silly and ridiculous. And I didn't want her to know, I didn't want her to feel like unwelcome here because I think she's like hosted kids from the ranch before for like beach trips. She knows, she's like familiar with it and she's older. So we just didn't want to have any, you're not welcome here. I just got some like camp beds ready for her, some bunk beds, which is not the finest place for like an 80-year-old couple to stay, but it worked out. And there was probably a time in my life where I wouldn't have reacted as well to that. But at that point, I could kind of just laugh at it, which I was very thankful for.
Well, way to handle it with grace. And she
Yeah.
got the authentic camp experience.
Yes.
She and her husband
Yes.
may have felt like, hey, this is worth our visit. We got to see what the camp was all about and stay in one of the cabins. They were probably thrilled. I'm sure you made it very accommodating and hospitable.
Oh, I hope so.
That's so much fun. Well, thank you so much, Abby, for joining me. I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. After working all day long, I know you're tired, but I have enjoyed so much talking with you and hearing all of your tips and just the way that you do hospitality.
Thanks, Bess. It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.